I think Ruijerd appearing in this episode is going to catch a lot of people by surprise, because as quickly as he left our story at the end of Season 1, he just quickly thrust himself back into the narrative in Season 2, and right at the start of this episode, he just straight up asked the hard-hitting questions: where is Eris? I don't see her around. What exactly happened? And I think that this moment here in particular finally puts to rest one of the biggest dramas that has surrounded the Mushoku Tensei anime community since the end of Season 1. And what do I mean by that? Well, if anyone remembers the infamous or the famous conclusion of Season 1, Eris and Rudy did the deed. They got intimate together, and it was just, there's so much controversy around that. I don't want to dive down that rabbit hole. The point of the matter is that the relationship ended abruptly, and it left everybody in a state of just disarray and what's next, because obviously, anyone that was able to fully understand what was going on within the story understood that Eris as a character was very bad with expressing her feelings. Even when she was aggressive, her emotions behind the scenes of her being aggressive could have been maybe she was trying to be nice, or if she was not saying, if she said something very mean, in reality she was trying to be nice about it. You might chalk her up to maybe being a tsundere, but that is not it either. She's a very complex character that has a lot of layers to her, that doesn't just label her as a tsundere or a brute. There's just a lot more going on with her character. And the conclusion of Season 1 was a heavily debated segment of the story, that Eris as a character was someone that just left Rudy high and dry after everything, left him a message, cut her hair, and anyone that knows the significance of hair cutting knows it means that you want to change as a person. It's character development or growth. It's a common theme within anime, manga, and light novels. But obviously there was a lot more going on there, with the letter that was left behind, to just the first time between Eris and Rudy, to also what just happened in the story for Eris's life, for why she would even do that. So let's cover that backstory real quick and why this was brought into question for this episode. As we know, thanks to the main point of Mushoku Tensei Season 1 was that Rudy got a second chance at life, but also he got teleported to the Demon Continent, and thanks to just chances entirely, he was able to meet Ruijerd that helped protect Rudy and Eris and help them return back home. And thanks to a lot of hardships, a lot of trials and stuff, they managed to return home at the end of Season 1. And it was the end of a journey that was very emotional. It was something that I just did not expect to see, and I think many that was watching Mushoku Tensei did not expect to see the conclusion of a journey. Seeing the end of characters journeying together for their objective and accomplishing their objective in an entire season. It was an emotional moment, and it caught the entire anime community by storm when it happened. I remember the discussions were absolutely everywhere on Reddit, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. It was everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. It was because just seeing the conclusion of Ruijerd leaving them behind was emotional. And then the scene after that was with Rudy and Eris doing the deed. And the thing about this is at that time period, Eris found out a lot about the situation of her homeland. She found out that her very town, her country, pretty much was devastated. Her parents and grandpa gone, dead. And it was emotional. You gotta imagine Eris being so young at the time, learning that her very family is just gone. And now she is being betrothed off to a random individual that she doesn't really know or care about soon as she arrives back at her camp, and being thrusted into politics. That's clearly not what Eris would want as an individual. And so in a moment of desperation, weakness, and not really knowing what to do, she obviously got intimate with Rudy. And then also thinking about what just happened prior to all this information, and how Rudy literally almost died to the dragon god himself, she felt inadequate. She felt weak. She felt like she couldn't protect anyone. After just now realizing she lost her entire family, her parents and her grandpa, she doesn't want to lose Rudy as well. So she vowed in that moment, it's very clear, that she wanted to be better. She wanted to be stronger. She wanted to be able to protect Rudy. That's what she wanted to do. And so when she said that they weren't compatible, it's because she realized that she would only hold him back, or she felt she would hold him back, and that she wouldn't be able to stop him from potentially dying. That's how she felt. And so I think that that moment was the misunderstanding misunderstanding, is that Rudy, when he read the letter, he assumed that Eris was saying he was inadequate maybe in the bedroom, maybe inadequate as an individual personality-wise, and he took it to heart, which is what led to his downward spiral of depression, isolation, loneliness. You get the point. And so, there was a lot of misunderstanding between the two characters, and I think one of the big details here is that Ruijerd is very well aware of this, and even Rudy, even though he doesn't want to fully admit it, he is now in a better place to really think about it, that Eris was not good with words, and Ruijerd brings this up, like, she never could get her point across well, she couldn't really speak really well in terms of what she wanted without being very aggressive about it, and so when you think about that, it's like, look, you know, you need to be able to hear both sides, you need to be able to actually know what she says, so if she ever does come to you and you ever see her again, you know, do listen to her side of the story, and I think that was a very powerful moment to showcase not just how Ruijerd is as a character, how he's non-changing, but also how Rudy as well as a character has changed since the conclusion of Season 1. So let's dive headfirst into that one first. So Rudy, I think if this was Season 1 version of him, he never would have probably listened to Ruijerd to the same extent that he did in this episode. And what do I mean by that? We gotta look at one of the most important moments of Season 1, which was when Rudy had an argument with his father, Paul. And this brought into question just how Rudy has been acting in the story, how immature he has been, how he has put no thought or thinking about his family members that is within this world. He didn't think about them at all, you know, when everybody got mass teleported around the world. And so because of all these little things coming into question, Rudy had a major spat with his father. And, you know, we saw how the argument happened. They were both in the wrong. They both had, you know, expectations of each other. And, you know, it caused them to have a divide. But thanks to, you know, Rudy having a lot of people around him in his corner, like, for instance, Ruijerd or Eris, and then also just being able to think about the entire situation, he straight up was able to sit down and listen to Paul's side of the story. And I think that was a very big moment to show the growth of his character, that he was willing to open up and not fall back into the world of isolation that he had in his previous life. He listened to Paul. And I think that if Rudy did not have, let's say, individuals around him at that time, he probably never would have rekindled a bond with his father ever again. In this case, Ruijerd being here and communicating with Rudy, I think that showcases once again an extension of Paul and Rudy's argument from Season 1, but it also showcases the extension that Rudy doesn't need a lot of people around him to put himself in a better place. He now can actually potentially look at Eris and be able to communicate with her without him, you know, shutting himself off. He actually has the strength to do it himself. He has grown mentally and physically, and I think that is a very important segment that this episode does very subtly. It doesn't try to shove it in your face, it doesn't try to say this is what's happening, it lets the audience that's able to pay attention and understand these themes understand what's going on within the scene, and I really like that. It's a really good segment of the episode, and hell, this is only like a minute and 50 into the episode. It just really goes to show the depth that, you know, the writer of Mushoku Tensei put into the story to do something like this, and the animators obviously do their best to really convey the story in the best way possible with very few narrations, and I guess that's a perfect segue to talk about that. Obviously, Mushoku Tensei's anime isn't perfect, okay? Let's just be completely blunt here. Is it accurately following every little nitty-gritty detail of the light novel or the web novel? No, it's not. Is that a bad thing? Not really, and let's talk about that. There's this atmosphere, and even myself was like this at one point a long time ago, so I felt like an anime adaptation absolutely had to be 100% exactly to the letter like the light novel. But that is not feasible. And why is that? Well, we gotta think about just the adaptation part. A book to a movement, like, of animation and art. It's completely different. You cannot put every single line of dialogue and narration into an anime. It's not feasible. It's not something that, you know, can be done properly. Sometimes there's exceptions, but most of the time it's just not feasible. And so doing the actual main streamlined version of the story, like keeping all the major plot points and everything while maintaining the integrity of the series, but having to skim some of the fat, that's what, you know, Mushoku Tensei does, the anime does. And I think it does it in such a very good way that it doesn't feel like it's disrespecting the original source. It does it in a way that feels like it keeps the very integrity of what MT is about. And that is a core difference, is that when a lot of stuff is adapted from a light novel into an anime, it feels like there's a lot of disrespect. There is things that really are important that are just straight up cut out, but MT doesn't really do that. It doesn't really cut out anything that's important at all. It keeps the integrity of things. Like, let's be completely blunt here. Like, let's look at this segment here in the middle of the episode with the whole underwear situation. Was this important? Like, let's really think about this, okay? In the grand scheme of things, was this important segment? In a way, yes and no. It showcases the dynamic that Rudy has within the school and how much power he has, technically, even if he doesn't want it. It shows that, the two Beast girls are willing to follow him and do things for him to make him happy, even if he doesn't ask. And it showcases that his very relationship with the student council. There's a lot going on here with this comedic scene. Is it relatively important? No. But it does it get the point across that Rudy definitely has a lot of weight in the school and is able to do a lot of things, even if he doesn't want to do those things. Like, he can get things done. Yes, he definitely can. And I think that a lot of people, when you think about, like, when people are adapting shows, they probably would cut something like this, but it wasn't. And I think this shows the integrity of the show, that Mushoku Tensei doesn't want to, cut details that relatively could expand upon even the side characters. Because this scene doesn't really showcase any way to really expand upon Rudy as a character. It expands upon his, supporting cast. And I think that's, the importance of this segment, showcasing how the school interacts to Rudy's very presence and the people that actually follow him. So I think that is the important aspect of what the second half of the show does, which gets back into the integrity of the show. It keeps the integrity of what it's supposed to be, the themes and nature of it, and I think that is one of the big drawing factors of why a lot of people love just Mushoku Tensei's anime. Light novel readers, web novel readers, that's why they love it. Now, with all that being said, I am really sad to see Ruijerd go. I mean, he was literally only around for like 8 minutes, and he was gone. And it's sad to see that. Just as quickly as he entered back into the story, the narrative forcing his way back in, he was already gone. And I hate that. I really hate that he's gone, but at the same time, his role has been served. His role has always been to help, kids in need and, be able to, protect them on their journey. That's what he's always done. And so, in a way, Ruijerd is doing what he's always done within the story. We just didn't get to see that story, which is sad, but at the same time, it's very much like his character, and it was nice to see. It feels like you had that family member come back in your life briefly for a family visit, and then he's got to go back to his home country or something. That's basically what happened here, and it's sad, but it's amazing to see him once again. Now, with that being said, though, we got to talk about these two characters. We got to talk about Aisha and Norn, and their very significance to the plot, and what is going to happen going forward, and why, this is going to have such a huge impact on Rudy as a character. So one detail here that does need to be expressed is that we can see the very difference of personalities between these two characters just straight up within this episode. Aisha is a very bubbly and expressive girl that knows what she wants. She knows what she wants to accomplish, and she's not afraid to ask for what she wants. That's what type of character Aisha is. Norn, on the other side, is the very reserved girl that's very quiet, very calm, and even if she wants something, she won't necessarily express it unless she has a lot of courage and motivation built up within her, like when she asked to go to the dorms. She, for the most part, will just stay silent on anything, and the only time she really does speak up is when it has something to do with her dad, which we have clearly seen in the first season of Mushoku Tensei when Rudy struck at his father, Paul. So all that into consideration, we see that they're the exact opposites, and their very upbringing was vastly different from each other. For one, Norn obviously was constantly protected by her father. We know that he was separated from everyone, and he had Norn with him, and he protected her. He put her potentially through school, or at the very least, he allowed her to have always a place to sleep and clean and wonderful clothes, which is what I talked about in my reviews for Season 1. While Aisha, as a character, she was thrusted off and basically imprisoned with her mother, and she had a very difficult beginning when she got, teleported. teleported. So, the very upbringings could be completely different here. But there was one thing that this episode did showcase when it came to Aisha's character, is that she is very self-conscious about her relationship to Rudy. And what that means is that she realizes she is a half-sister, and that her mother technically is a concubine, and not necessarily the original wife to Paul. And she feels inadequate. She feels like she is not wanted, so to speak, an unwanted child, and she references the reason why she knows is thanks to her mother telling her, but also from her supposed grandma. And I think that this is a very big detail that is very quick to skim over, but it does hint that there was some form of complications when Aisha most likely went to stay with Paul for a while, and whoever this supposed grandmother actually is. So whoever this grandmother is definitely doesn't probably approve of Aisha, or approve of, just Paul's overall double marriage, so to speak. That's clear as day what's actually happening there. Now, with that being said, one other thing is there is a rivalry between these two sisters. For one, Aisha is quick to showcase her intelligence and how quick at thinking she is. She is quick to pick up things. She completely aced the exam, so to speak, to be able to get into school, which allowed her to not have to go to school, and she could just be a housemaid. Well, obviously, Norn as a character is someone that just did a barely passing below average grade, and it showcased that she is definitely not as intelligent as her sister, at least when it comes to the exams. And I think this showcases one of the big details. The, dividing factor between the characters is that most likely Norn feels she is inferior. As much as Aisha feels like she's inferior because she isn't a pure-blooded sibling to, let's say, someone like Rudy, Aisha, actually, tries her best. While Norn, she feels inferior to Aisha because she is someone that's able to do anything she sets her mind to. And I think that showcases a divide between the characters, the complications between them, and probably why Rudy allowed Norn to even go to the dorm in the first place to live by herself. To allow her to have some independence and the ability to showcase that she's doing everything with her own strength instead of someone else pushing her along and helping her achieve anything in life, making her feel more inadequate or useless than she already is. So I think that is a very powerful thing that this episode tries to convey with the very few scenes that we see of these two characters. But, yeah, overall, an amazing episode of Mushoku Tensei. I can never get enough of it, and I cannot wait to see what the next episodes bring. So with that, be safe, stay healthy, I love you guys, Chibi out.